Thank you. So it is March 10th, 2002, and we are all organized here for a pre-council workshop. It is a workshop to solicit public input on hotspot funding for dispersed parking projects located near Emma Boulevard. And I just want to take a minute or two to make sure that we're organized in a way that we can hold this as a workshop and not just listening to all of us talk up here. Because I think what we'd really like to do is hear from everybody that has shown up today to reflect on the plans. Hi, welcome, come on in. The plans that have been developed and looked at, because Moab City is very determined to create, do what we can to create a parking opportunity for North Main Street businesses. So that's why we're here. And so we've had some things put out. We've emailed some plans for consideration among businesses and the school that will be hopefully positively affected by whatever decision that we make. And so we're here now to get feedback and have a conversation. And I'll just need to know from this council, as well as the public, how you would like to move forward with any sort of visual orientation of this workshop. I think at minimum what we can do is have someone on staff put the area of interest on the big screen so that we can stay oriented. So we have a screen here and a screen here, and then we get a special screen here so that we can face all of you. Well, I think the idea is, well, what I'd really like, what would make me most comfortable, although I know from being on the other side it's cringy, I would love for all of you to come a little closer and maybe circle up with us, just to have a little more of a circle feel. And I know that's probably the camp counselor in me asking for that, but I know that you're all very much interested in having this conversation. And I want it to feel like we're having a conversation together. And I'm so grateful that you're moving. Just know that the back of your head will be videotaped on YouTube. Thank you. Yay, thank you. That feels better. Okay, here's that. Once we all get a little reorganized in this way, maybe I'll jump us off with but not too close, right? We are practicing social distancing because of coronavirus. Close, but not too close. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for. Absolutely. I think that's a really good idea. I can start. We can just go around the room, say who we are. And in particular, those of you from the community, it would be really helpful to not only know your name, but your business and perhaps business location. I think that would help to frame the conversation. So, Emily Niehaus, Mayor.
Mark Duncan, Council.
Ronnie Dressreed, Council.
Gloria Simonson, City Attorney.
Santa Carey, Arches Real Estate Group, which is 505 North Main Street.
Valerie Brown with Arches Real Estate Group, North Main Street.
Sandy Norton, Arches Real Estate Group, 505 North Main.
Josh Green, no business, just here as a parent.
Let's go back to Cinda, yes. Oh. And behind you?
Ryan Anderson, UDOT Project Manager.
Thank you for being here.
My name is Jacqueline Marcus,
Lynn and Sonny Ottinger, Moab Rock Shop.
Welcome.
I'm Crystal Sims, just representing the Moab Church of Christ.
Thank you.
J.J. Scarborough, Superintendent, Grant County School District.
Welcome.
I'm Mary DeLeo, representing St. Pius Temple Catholic Church.
Thanks.
Bettina Fenster, First Baptist Church.
Amy Weiser, I'm here representing Business Resolutions.
Jim Webster on the board.
Melissa Bird, School Board. Judy Nichols was inspired bicycles at 497 North Main.
And Chuck Nichols, same address and business.
Chuck Williams, City Engineer.
Scott Newman, was inspired bicycles.
Mark Canoe, representing Community Church.
Curly Castle, Assistant City Manager.
Galen Jones, Moab City Council.
Tony Knudsen and Boyd, Moab City Council.
All right, so the goal of this is to share plans and ideas and things that the city has been, that has been under consideration, and to get community feedback about those conversations we've been having. Let's start with, who on the staff here has the computer and the map and the dongle?
Do we have, he was looking for you. Do you have your laptop?
I do.
Can you
Put it
please
up.
for me put up the map of the area that we're talking about?
Emma?
So just the satellite Google,
All we looked at today?
the satellite Google map,
The aerial.
just to, from Google. Thank you so much. I like that we have layers that we can click and unclick to help us get oriented.
It's the spring protection zone.
Thanks, Chuck.
So here's 400 north.
Mayor, the wireless mic is out, so that
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. Let's put it in someone's hands. Chuck? How about the other Chuck? Okay. So here we have the area that we've been talking about. Oh, that's really helpful too. Thank you. And so we've gone through a lot of informal conversations with many of you over the past year, at least year now, to get organized, knowing that Highway 191 would be widened and that parking would be removed to 400 North, and that there would be some parking spaces lost, and that we also will be looking at doing a hawk crossing to connect the bike path coming down 191 across the highway and down Emma Boulevard and 100 North. So, yeah, Chuck, if you don't mind, everyone, if you can see where his cursor is going
100 north or 100 west?
west. Sorry, I've got a virus on the brain. Apologies. So 100 west. Thank you. See, workshops work. So, so a hot crossing there, an easement that has been approved by this council, and then down Emma Boulevard, improvements made to that road, and then down Emma Boulevard.
Is that for bicycles only?
It's also for vehicles. In fact, Chuck, do we have the map that council approved that shows the final design plan for the Hawk and the road?
So vehicles can travel off of Main Street and go to the school in that direction?
Yes. No, to the, did you say to the school?
Go all the way through and over to the...
No, because concurrent with the decision to take traffic one way from 191, we committed to,
I think we need to pull up the map because you couldn't go down the continuation of Minnie Lee Emma, but you could go down Maxine. So we'll pull it up and we'll show you, yeah.
Yeah, there was no legend with this map, so can you explain what the red hash marks are and what the orange is?
absolutely. Chuck Williams, engineer, and I don't know if you want to be at the table or you're better there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So this is the alignment that was approved in the land swap. And this is the new Mini Lee is the name of this road, actually. Turning off of the highway, it's to be a one-way street inbound. And then ultimately, it could go down as far as Maxine, or it could go as far as tying into Emma down here where it would go to two-way again. Two-way traffic. So it's one-way traffic only between Maxine and the highway. This dash line, is that what one of the things you're talking about? Yeah, that's the easement that was swapped for this right-of-way. See the dash lines up here? So the city acquired this right-of-way, and Prospector Village acquired this easement for utilities. And this orange that you see scattered here and here are for drainage and landscaping. This one would also serve as a barrier so that traffic could not go through, as council is directed, onto Mi Vida or from Mi Vida onto Emma parking lot if this happened. These are about 20 parking spaces. And then this is the park strip that would also be vegetation, retention, because this is the shared use path. This will be the Hawk location, the Hawk signal, similar to the one at City Market, would come down, shared use path, which is bicycles and pedestrians only. And right now it ends right about here. So, anything else? Did I explain it for you?
Well, go ahead.
Could you scroll just a little further, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, right there at the community church where the parking spaces are, a little bit, thank you, Josh Green. Right there where the purple UDOT funds are going with the 250,000 where the arrow ends, that looks like an inlet to the community church, is that correct?
Yes.
So we still would have people turning in there and using that as a shortcut to go in front of the school as a possibility, correct?
I suppose it's possible.
So we would still be increasing traffic in front of the school if that was there, just out of would we all be under that
And
agreement?
this is a conceptual, so feedback like that is really helpful. So if the church wants to say, we'd prefer no inlet, like we like the parking, we prefer no inlet, that's really helpful for us to hear. So is that an official comment?
That's a comment as a
regarding?
parent, not representing anybody.
Okay, okay. Thank you for that comment.
So just to clarify, Josh, you're concerned that people would use that to go in and out the exit on Mi Vida?
It'd be a shortcut. My concern, I don't know if you want that on me again. So, like I said, I'm not representing the church. I'm actually representing my two kids.
Yep.
I'm representing my kids who are going to be going to this school. My biggest concern with this whole project is how originally we were going to shoot them down right there, then stuff them right in front of the horseshoe. That's what we call that, where we pick our kids up. I could see that getting abused big time, especially by impatient tourists. Because why have that open up when you could put 2 more parking spaces there, it looks like, or possibly even 3. And then also, too, if we were putting in a parking lot like that to create a funnel to get them back into that one way, when you guys built that, would you have a retention wall there of some sort, maybe a foot-high wall to keep people from hopping it in their rigs and driving through the parking lot and running things over? Just as an idea, I'd like you to consider that.
I think the plan, that orange area, it would be, vegetated and barricaded in a way that people would likely not jump the curb. I can't speak for aggression, but I would assume not. And I think I would like to maybe put that out to everybody that's here, is just your thoughts and your thoughts from the school's perspective of this proposed design.
Can we zoom out for a minute?
Sure, we could zoom out and.
Can you stay zoomed in?
Oh,
Can you zoom in on the Maxine Boulevard? Is that where that second parking lot is right there?
yes.
Is that a dead end at the end of that parking lot and not a through street?
It is currently designed as a through street. So feedback about that would be very helpful from you.
Yeah, I'll just speak on behalf of the school district, even though I have a couple of board members here. I would not be in favor of traffic being able to come down Maxine straight into the horseshoe of the school right there. For right now, if somebody wants to go to the school, they would have a very intended purpose of being on that road back there. That's going to open it up pretty much like was said earlier, for any tourist traffic just to come straight down Maxine and dumps them right into the inlet of the horseshoe of HMK.
Is that shared sentiment from the parent and the board?
It almost feels like the church is getting blocked in with the parking lot when I look at that. Like,
Then there's no way to get there, no way to get out.
no way to get there, no way to get out. Yeah. It just seems like one thing, I mean, I know this is for tourism, but especially for our locals, right? That's the whole point of this thing. I mean, obviously we want to create parking for the people that are losing parking space by the road widening. But if parents park there to take their kids across the street to go to assemblies, parents park there to take their kids into the preschool that is in that building and in the building next door. If we turn that into a parking space where's everybody going to park that has been using that for how long the church been there? Over 100 years? That's 100 years that's been used by locals there, and we're just going to give it up to the tourists? Like, I really think that if you guys want this to pass and go through, it's going to have to be one-way traffic to get them out of there. Because, I mean, we're looking at like a block and a half, or not even a block and a half a block of a road that we're putting in that we've already installed that goes to nowhere right now. And it seems like it's benefiting it's going to benefit a couple of the businesses on the street, but it seems like it's really going to benefit whatever is going to get built right there in those lots that are getting joined together. So are we doing this to help the town out, or are we doing this to help out that business owner?
That is such a good question. So I really want to address that. Can we go back to Google?
I apologize.
Matt.
I didn't mean to go. If I went off, I apologize.
It's okay. That's why we're doing this, so that we can have a really open conversation about this.
Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
You know, as a representative of the community church, we feel like that also, by making Maxine closed off, then we would have no access for our preschool kids who would have to unload on the main street, and we would have no access then to our own parking lot behind the gravelled area. So we're not would not be in favor of blocking off Maxine.
So while the school district is saying blocking Maxine from the new road would be favorable, you're saying not so favorable for us because it restricts our traffic. And I just want to...
Well, if Emma Boulevard was two-way traffic out to Main Street instead of being half and only one-way traffic, then they could access Maxine. You could block it off from the school, and everybody going to the church could come down Main Street and turn in at the light and go over to that area and use it.
But accessing it from Mi Vida.
From Minnie Lee, or coming down from Minnie Lee, make it instead of one way. Why is it only one way?
Because we don't have room to put two-way in. That's the
Emma
issue.
Boulevard's a pretty big street. It should have plenty of room for parking on both sides and...
So in order for us to have negotiated the easement to get off of Main Street, we had to trade the width of the road. That's what the orange dash is. Thank you so much, Ronnie.
Getting this part meant
Well, you
that part of
already
the width
traded
got
that.
given up.
It was our only way in which to get that. And I want to point out too, we are all in this room recognizing this is tough. So I want to recognize that. And I think we've been trying to do the best, thinking that we, up until this point to try to solve for it. But I want to point something out. Please Google map and just a slightly zoomed out. The city really only has, if we're not going to be and not able to be partnering with private property owners, we literally only have our streets to consider for dispersed parking for North End Main Street businesses. And as Scott, you and others have said, we're losing our parking on Main Street. what is the city doing to ameliorate? And it's been really complicated because there is no good solution for that. And I just want to recognize, staff and council's time that we've put into this, but I do think we're all here sitting saying it's complicated. So feedback is really important. Comments like you've been making are really helpful. JT?
Yeah, can you zoom back in on Maxine? Was there any discussion around making Maxine one way back to the east so that it's one way out and not into the school?
You mean blocking it here?
Making it one way to the east with parking along both sides.
Not blocking it, but it's one way.
Which would give you parking lots along both sides, and then that makes the traffic flow out of the school.
Straw
not
poll,
school.
if that feels good to you.
Could you show us on the map a little bit?
So I think what he's saying is that Maxine would be one way. So there's one way and there's one way.
And that way, people leaving the school could go out and leave that way, but
Dropping
people
kids off.
off at the churches could go one way into the churches like they normally have been doing.
So I'll just say, I think the history there, I think anything can be discussed here and entertained. I'm pretty sure the history is that when some of the discussion started, the city was trying to make up for parking businesses were losing. So the hope was, if it was accessible from the Emma side, that and if there happened to be an alley, if that worked out to go over to the main street, then people could come down Minnie Lee and park in those spaces and just walk through the alley. So that might be one reason it wasn't initially drawn that way, because I guess the idea was more making up spaces for places like Poison Spider and the Realty Company. But I mean, I think anything is on the table. We need to hear from everyone. I mean, I was just going to say, my understanding for part of the reason for this workshop is that there were piecemeal discussions over the last year plus with individuals, but never everybody in one room. So I think some assumptions got made about what certain people wanted. And so anyway, hopefully having you guys all here, we'll have an understanding so there's no miscommunication about, because I also think some people in this room maybe didn't know about this before now. So if you need more background too, let us know. It's a weird one for sure.
Sina?
So on paper, everything looks great, but in reality, I lived farther down the road, and what you notice is before school starts and before school finishes, there is just a line of traffic parked along that road there, and if you live in that area there, it's very difficult to cross over to get back down into Main Street. So in reality, if you don't give them another alternate place to drive, I mean, parents are not going to not bring their children in their cars to school for a few reasons. Some kids get bullied on the bus, and other parents feel that they don't want their child abducted or sexually harassed. And so you can't blame parents, and they're just going to go, well, my kid doesn't count, so I'm going to pick up my kid there. So that's sort of been a long-running situation where there is a real T right there of traffic during certain times of the day that you certainly can't blame it. But like I said, on paper it might look great, but in reality, the traffic flow is going to do what the traffic flow is going to do. You know, whether they go up or down a one-way street, or they're jumping a curb, or they're just parking double park, or they extend the length of the parking because they can't get into that area or whatever. But it's not going to stop that traffic for the locals dropping their kids off and picking them up.
So is it fair to say that we could possibly solve more than just loss of parking spaces on Main Street if we can do this the right way, that it's going to eliminate or at least
I think you ought to
alleviate some of the congestion that's already there, because like you say, parents are going to drop their children off.
Right.
And we're not.
So if you went out there and all of you stood there while the beginning of school and the end of school.
Sat there in my vehicle.
Good idea
Yeah.
of watching other traffic that are not picking up their kids, how they can't get through there. And, and that might click a light and say, on paper it looks great, but in reality, maybe we need to do this instead, or maybe we need to tweak it a little bit, because I've seen that happen with the BLM on traffic flow, the daily takeout. They thought, okay, well, we'll just have it go down from the east to the west, and it's like the buses can't turn with that type of a turn with a trailer to get back down in there. It has to go the other way. And so the CDL bus drivers figured that out, but they put a one-way street there, and they called me and said, go look how nice we've done it. I was in charge of the CDL drivers. And I said, you got it reversed. And they said, no, we don't. And I said, on paper, it looks great, but guess what? It doesn't work. Yeah. So then they went there and watched, and they switched it around to reality. So, that's another example of maybe doing a little bit of footwork on it to actually see the traffic problem we have right now there.
Thank you for those comments.
Well, I by being over there and picking up my kids at the school, sometimes my granddaughter was going there. She's not anymore, but anyway, at them times when I had to go there, it was really congested, and if there was another way out besides driving up through that neighborhood or turning around and going back out towards the park, if there was another way to access the school, it would be better. I don't know why everybody's opposed to allowing the street to go from Main Street over to the school. It doesn't make sense to me. Why they couldn't have that be an access to the school rather than blocking off the
Good point.
parking lot.
Good question.
I mean,
JT, the superintendent right behind you, just his hand shot up, so he might want to tell you why that is concerning, or maybe it's not. Or...
I couldn't hear what he was saying.
Oh, that he was just wondering why not just go from Main Street straight through to Mi Vida? What's the opposition?
I guess I'm thinking about a lot of options here. Sorry.
No worries. But what is the opposition in particular for
blocking off
this going straight to here and leaving this?
Yeah, it's still a route. It's still a route into the school off of the main thoroughfare.
That's what they need, is more access to the school so people can get there easier.
I'll talk to that. So,
Oh, let's give you the microphone just so that everybody can hear you and you're recorded.
So, the people that are coming from the north that live on the north side of the valley aren't going to be coming on Main Street and turning down Minnie Lee to pick up their kids. You're coming from the residential area, so you're going to hit My Vida and come. That congestion area, if you start to put more cars coming north onto, that's My Vida, you're going to cause a lot more congestion and from the south. I know that probably doesn't make sense, but if the cars start to block up in the north, it'll cause more congestion from the south, and it'll be very messy. That they've proposed that it was a one-way in. I don't know if we've talked about being a two-way, but we're also worried that if the town gets busy, the tourists will decide to take that route instead of going down Main Street to other hotels and the 100 West commercial, the hotels and the restaurants. That's a easy way to go around the congestion down Main Street. So it's just pushing a lot of tourist traffic. It's congesting back the south, the north traffic heading south, the parents, it's just, it causes a lot more.
More people would travel on Main Street instead of coming on First North. They travel on Main Street and turn and make it.
So a parent would probably not go all the way up and turn left across Main Street. I mean, turning left isn't a popular thing to do on Main Street. You usually want to turn right. So as a parent, we'll turn at Cinda's Sweet Cravings, and you can see that during parent pickup time, how busy that can get. And once the tourist season starts, you then don't turn left there anymore. You go a different route, so you go on 100 West. So it's just, you don't like to turn left on Main Street. So
Let's give Cinda the microphone. Thank you all for being comfortable to speak.
I don't have kids there. I don't have to deal with this on a day-to-day, so please excuse my naivete here. Where the bus drop-off is there not an option that we could do a one-way in there? So the line of traffic would head down towards 500, if you will, and somehow reconstruct the horseshoe so that that's your bus pickup. And then your parking lot is still right there, so if you're accessing as a parent to the front of the school, it's still easy. But you've taken that whole congestion at the horseshoe away, and it's just bus.
You're saying bus at the horseshoe, and then parent drop-off is down at the south of the property?
Yeah.
I think that was originally the design of HMK, from what the rumor I've heard.
Yeah, before me, before JT, it would be Jim could answer
Yeah,
that.
Jim, can you answer that? So the question is, so Cinda said, why are parents dropping kids off at the horseshoe instead of down off of 400 North?
We were just talking about that.
Yeah, because what I heard, the rumor was that was the original plan.
So we were just talking about that, and I was talking about if the traffic was one way out Maxine, so one way back to the east, you could actually do parking along both sides of Maxine, which would give you more parking spaces. It would actually help the school district for parking spaces, I think, as well as the churches for additional parking spaces. But then having the discussion with the school board about moving the parent pickup drop-off over to the current bus pickup and drop-off, and then reversing the flow in the horseshoe so that the buses come into that south entrance, exit the north entrance, and then they can just go straight out Maxine.
That would require some study though, because we line a lot of buses up.
Yep.
And so it looks like it, and it's pretty tight. So I don't know whether we could actually do that, but we could, certainly look at it.
I thought, I was on the board, but I always thought that was the original design. But that answer never I've asked many people, like, why do we not do that?
And just as a mom hat here, just knowing a lot of the children that eat breakfast at HMK, that's a long footpath from down there all the way up. But it's, it would be shorter for the bused kids anyway to get to.
But you'd be entering the bus from the other side, so in other words, it'd be kids running.
Oh, but I think I'm in agreement. Yeah, I'm not saying it's, yeah.
So I have a couple of concerns. I live on Mavita, and my business is losing parking on Main Street. Plus, I have a rental on Rosalie Court. So Rosalie Court, the garages are accessed from Maxine. No, from Minnie Lee, sorry. That's the back side of those properties, and there's 3 garages there that are accessed.
Yep.
And so the only way for them to access their garages is to come off Main Street and go down to the parking structure and then access them from the parking structure. So I see that as a problem. This parking, the way you have it, that has been approved through the city for discussion, doesn't work for us on Main Street because we have to walk pretty much from the school all the way up to the highway and then all the way down to our business, which I don't know how far it is, but if you're walking it,
You might be able to press this little guy if you want to show where you are on the map.
okay. So if you're, wow, cool.
I don't actually think, Ronnie, like I said, I don't think it works on the screen. Whoops.
It was a dirty trick.
Yeah, it just doesn't work on the screen, Ronnie, yeah.
So if we're walking from Minnie Lee all the way up to Minnie Lee to the
All the way to Highway 191.
to the highway and then
you gotta
all
walk
the way down to
Highway
our,
191
Yeah,
to get to her.
and if we're doing that 6 times a day, because morning, lunch, evening, plus we come and go all day long,
Yeah.
that's a pretty good hike if you're doing that 5 or 6 times a
You
day.
get your aerobic.
I'd love to just, yeah.
I need exercise, but
So here's my question,
I
because
wouldn't wanna go to your business
while,
and have to park there.
I know, well, hopefully the parking that's in front of the business would be for visitors, but,
We're not gonna allow any more parking on Main Street in front of business.
but they have parking lots.
We have a parking lot that we will designate for.
I mean, I can't understand why UDOT can't allow parking when we're gonna have a 7-foot lane. We're gonna have a 1-foot curb and then a 6-foot asphalt strip. That's a 7-foot lane. Now, all they have to do is fudge a little bit more by another foot, and they could have an 8-foot parking strip all the way down Main Street on both sides, and they need to allow that, and I don't really appreciate.
I don't want to put
missing
you on the spot, but are you
missing
comfortable commenting?
in front of my store, because that's gonna happen the same thing. I'm gonna lose all the parking in front of my business.
So my other issue is, if we're coming down Minnie Lee to go into that parking, and there's a hawk light there, how are we gonna turn left? How are we gonna turn left off of Main, down that road, and there's a hawk light there?
That's Melissa's point, nobody wants to turn left off.
So nobody's gonna be able to turn left there to get to that parking
You're gonna
lot
have to
to
push the
start with.
button on the hawk light to get the light to turn red.
But you have to get out of your car to go push the button.
But you can't park there to go push the button.
So, would you like to hear UDOT's response to the Highway 191 widening project?
And my
Yeah.
other issue
Oh, sure.
is, I'm sorry, but
No worries.
I live on Mavita, so having the school traffic go up and come down North Mavita, right down the street, to me, that doesn't work either. So, there you go.
Thank you.
So, I have a lot of issues with it.
All I can say is that we've looked at it. 6-foot shoulder is what's going to be designed there. That doesn't accommodate parking spaces. So we've looked at a lot of options. It's interesting to listen to this conversation because I think we've kind of tried to brainstorm with the city, and a lot of these concepts have been discussed at length. I think there was a design at one point for a road construction project with a traffic signal approved at this location that the city council and members of the council decided we weren't going to construct. So it's interesting to hear, everybody kind of brainstorm through these ideas. As far as parking on US 191, as much as we realize it's going to impact those businesses, and we've tried to look at multiple options and ways to alleviate that, there really is no option where parking is going to be remaining on 191 in this section. And we have, this was not the first option that was evaluated. There was a lot of options that were evaluated. None of them have panned out.
What is the problem, why they can't do it?
6 foot does not accommodate parking.
The easement's wide enough to put the lane wider than 6 foot.
No, from what we have, we're having to purchase right-of-way now just to construct.
Scott Newton?
6 feet, this is what a car looks like fitting in 6 feet. That's a normal size car. So I'm wondering how you're going to keep people parking in the 6-foot lanes, because that car fits pretty perfect. And we already see cars or big trucks parking on Main Street where they're hanging out with their windows hanging out. So you can also look at this. This is when there was construction being done and there's cones lined up and people are fitting Sprinter vans in there and an RV to fit in there. So I'm just curious how you're going to keep people parking in those. That's a FedEx truck parking in the 6-foot lane. So I'm curious how you're going to keep people from parking in there.
I speak loud. I think they'll hear me. But Scott, you and I have had this conversation several times. That becomes an enforcement issue. That's not something we can enforce. All we can say is we're not providing parking in that section. It doesn't allow enough width for us to safely allow parking in that area, so it will become an enforcement issue that will have to be enforced.
So there's no way you could take, because what I was told by Troy, who was the project manager before you, is that you needed 8 feet. So couldn't you take 2 feet from the other side, I don't care what side of the road it is, and make it 8 feet so you have parking on one side of the highway and then you don't on the other? And when I asked David Everett about that, he was like, I don't want to be involved in that discussion. It seems like you could have done that so you could have still had parking on Main Street, but that was something that no one wanted to talk about.
We talked about access for parking within the shoulder of US 191.
But there's not going to be safe access then when they're trying to pull into a parking lot and it's full, and they're hitting their brakes trying to get into a parking spot, and they can't, so they're going to get rear-ended on the highway. So you're going to create more accidents on this two-lane, because my parking lot's going to be full all the time. And so what's going to happen is people are there to do that. They sit right there trying to pull in, and they can't. So eventually somebody's going to get rear-ended, and you're actually making it more unsafe.
So we are at a position right now where the widening project has, started essentially. The designs are complete. The contractor, who is local, which is exciting, has been selected, and they're publishing their schedule moving forward. And we are, we've got the plans of the widening project laid out before us, and those plans do not include parking north of 400 North. And so that's what we are trying to work through right now is, does the city have the ability to create some parking that can accommodate perhaps employees and long-term parking visitors of businesses that are going to be negatively affected by this widening without negatively affecting the existing flow of traffic, perhaps solving for some of the congestion that we see at the school, and that's what we're here to solve for. And you've got the mic.
Sorry, I wanted to wait till everybody was done. So with that being said, and this is not a dig at all, please do not think this, seems like land was swapped and traded before any of this seemed to be thought out ahead of time. I notice on here that we got 5,000 square feet, roughly 5,000 something square feet. The landowner got 7,000, almost 2,000, over 2,000 feet more than what we got out of this. The road right there is 30, according to the plat, I went and had it at the recorder's office, but that's a 36.75 foot wide easement that you guys have right there. One-way traffic through there, how wide are we making this sidewalk for people to ride their bicycles down? Can you put parking there, and that way it would be closer for the owners to be able to walk up through there? I mean, I know that we have the big huge idea Moab is a town of trails, but the trails don't have to be super wide to make this happen. We could put parking in there on the right-hand side. People would still be able to access through there, and we wouldn't have to, take up as much as we have. I mean, that's a big chunk of land that we gave up. I mean, that's what it says. It was 7,859 square feet that we gave to the landowner there. We all know what's going in there. Like, we know what the plan is for this. That's why there was the offer to pave the parking lots at the churches in lieu of letting overflow parking go there. I understand that we're putting extra parking in here so a structure can get built there to meet the land codes that we have in place, the land use codes, because you have to have parking lots for a hotel. So are we really building this to help the tourist out and help the fine folks in here that have businesses and homes around there, or are we building parking for a hotel to put their overflow parking in? Like I said, I am not here representing anything but as a parent and as a concerned citizen. I do work at a hotel, full disclosure. I am the general manager of a hotel. And yeah, I know that in order to build a hotel or property, you got to have parking, hence why the Homewood Suites has underground parking. So are we doing this to help us out? Like, honest, at the end of the day, 100%, is this to help us out as a community, or is this to create overflow parking and give the ability to build a structure there that we have all said that we don't want any more of? That is the only question that I have. And I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I mean, yeah. This is the question that I have.
I wouldn't feel bad for asking questions. I guess I'm going to say, as a council member, I don't know if it'll help anyone in the audience, so maybe I can ask the councilor, Joel. I think part of what make the best use of everyone's time is to overview what we can't change at this point, and what is still on the table. Because my understanding as a council member is on February 11th, we had a vote to have staff approach UDOT to use hotspot funding to put that parking lot in that's showing now on what sometimes gets confused if it's a continuation of Emma or a part of Mini Lee, but anyway. After that vote, it seemed like we got misinformation that people who were impacted, who we said we were doing this for, hadn't been consulted. So that vote is being revisited tonight. So my question to all of you that I need to know as a council member is, do you see value in having that parking lot there, or is there some other combination that would be helpful to you? Save those dispersed parking funds for something else? Do the setup differently? I don't know if we can zoom out for a second. And I'm not a designer by any means, so I'm not wedded to this in any way, and it probably has its own stupid problems, but I guess yet another possibility that hasn't been suggested, but there are probably good reasons it hasn't been, is that you could, if you're worried about through traffic, is you could maybe put a divider in the middle of Emma and the middle of Maxine, so you get a little parking on either side, but I don't know that that helps anyone, so you would have dividers. Here and there, but again, I mean, my full disclosure concern about this is that we had a vote on February 11th where the city's presentation was very much that we were doing this to benefit business owners, and later I was told that they didn't feel like it really, at least the two we spoke about the most, didn't feel like it did benefit them. So it just helps me to know, because I have to re-vote on this tonight, and I already voted against it, but for other reasons. Yeah.
Can I just say, that I can answer that question for you. Does it benefit business owners? None of these people, but whatever's going in there is what it's going to benefit, to me.
Okay, I want to say something.
But I could be wrong. I'm not representing everybody.
I own the building in Poison Spider, and we definitely need parking. And so Arches definitely needs parking. But what I was listening to you say was that there was this land trade made, and it wasn't quite made fairly. And one of the things that we need to get to our building is access. So I know the person that the land trade was made with, perhaps we could get access. And we can't, it was posed to us where we should ask that person. That person will never give us access. It needs to be done by the city. So if this land trade wasn't totally fair in the amount of square feet, I would like to ask the city to help us. And it's not just us. A lot of people in town are using that to get to Main Street. So I would like to see if you could, if the parking is there, if you could assist us in working.
To make a trail like from Emma Boulevard up to your business?
Yeah, what was happening before was we were using the church area, and the church said, nope, can't do that anymore. And so the only other access would be that property.
We're talking something like this, right? Here's Poison Spider, right there.
And you walk through that church parking lot?
Right now, you go through the church, right, sort of?
Right.
Some people do. And if they're gonna fence that off, which is my understanding, you're talking about an easement, something like this or something like this, right?
Correct.
So, Amy Weiser, you said that you're here representing business resolutions, so I think it would be helpful to listen to Amy's response to that.
I just wanted to set the record straight on what the gentleman in the front was saying. And the property owner was approached by the city originally to do a bike ped path through there. The property owner saw that was a great idea, worked with the city. There was talk about making it an actual road. The property owner was on board with that. The reason that the property owner ended up with more property is there's actually a right-of-way. There was an old right-of-way, Chuck can help me with this, but back behind those properties. And when you vacate something, the adjacent property owners all get half of that. That was kind of why that difference in square footage happened. The property owner was not involved in any design of this parking. They're just cooperating in the sense of trying to work with the city with whatever the city needs. Currently, they cannot build a hotel on that property, and they are looking at other plans of what else they can do on that property. They've approached other property owners and offered to share parking. They've offered to provide access, and they're not getting any
Who did they approach?
I don't know, I'm not Mike Bynum, but I know that he approached Poison Spider, and yes, he did. And he approached the other property owner as well. So I just wanted, the property owner, all he's doing is cooperating with the city. He's not doing this for his benefit. I just have to state that, and I don't, anyway.
And I'd like to clarify, I didn't mean that there was quid pro quo here. I'm just saying what I'm seeing is a benefit for whatever business is going in there. Originally, it was, before the moratorium, it was going to be a lodging property. In fact, it was even named Trace something, I can't remember what the name of it, I don't want to say that, but it was a lodging thing. Name. Sorry, what was it? Condos. Condos, yes. So, but I just want to say, I'm not saying there was quid pro quo, not at all, not even saying that, but I'm just saying I see a parking lot that's only going to benefit one business, and it's going to make people have to hoof it. And if they have pedometer, they're going to get their steps in for the day every single day.
Say no or Sandy or, oh, sure, yes.
I don't want to talk without, I just wanted to clarify, when you were speaking of a company that, or a business, private business, or landowner that you'd contacted for a, did you say a ped walk or something? Oh, I thought you were talking.
No, she's second.
Oh, well, you had said something about a business owner.
A way to get from the parking to the businesses on North Main Street.
Right.
And they had been using the church, and the church said, no, it's not working.
Yes, they had been using the church. And so in response to that, I am here representing the Moab Church of Christ. So we have never spoken with and allowed anybody to use our space. Although, being good stewards of the land, we have not been in opposition to that, as it made it easier for access. We have been contacted by Poison Spider for many years to find some agreement for them to use our land, although we are under deed restriction for it to be of church use only. We feel being good stewards of the land is to stand by that deed restriction. And we would love to see more parking down in that area. That's great. We're not in opposition to that at all. But we are in fear of some sort of ordeal, and I'm not good at this whole government thing, to where somebody might try to say that area is public use and then maybe absorb it into the city or take it from our current property. So, and that's just a fear on our part, not some sort of knowledge that we have that might be happening, just something that we've discussed amongst ourselves. So we've talked to our insurance company, and they've advised us to put up no trespassing signs and fence off our entire property securely and get security cameras and let nobody else, unfortunately, on the property, which grieves us immensely because it would, people have used it for forever, and we've put up fences in the past and they've been cut down. So I don't know.
Thank you for sharing that and your position. That's very, very helpful. Thank you.
So as we know, people recreate quite differently than they did 10 years ago. They used to bring their Jeeps down and then go on the trails. Now they bring a truck and a trailer that not only fits their Jeep, but their friend's Jeep or the other Jeep. And on Williams Way, they finally put a red band on the north side of the street so they couldn't park there. Because it was pretty tight getting through there. And the same thing with Entrada. There are big, long trucks and trailers all over that place. So if there is a hotel, which you're saying they will not allow it, but in the future, if they allow a hotel there, then I can certainly see those long trailers are not going to fit into a tiny little hotel parking spot. They're going to look for a parcel that's a little bit more open and bigger, and they do tend to come later in the evening. So to pull in there after 5 o'clock because they've worked till 5 in Salt Lake City and then come down, it's easy empty parking for them to only become a nightmare for us in the morning. So I'm, I guess, a little pleased that you're not going to allow a hotel there, so that would maybe discourage people parking there with long trailers. And
Yeah, let me just share a couple of facts. One, the reason why it's not currently allowed is that we as a council removed hotel from that zone. So it was rezoned to not allow hotel, and that's where we currently are with our code. The second fact that I wanted to share is that I wanted to take some responsibility of the parking proposal of using the streets for parking, because I was trying to respond to, we're losing parking on 191. We were getting nowhere with working with property owners, and we were trying as close as we could. And so the plan B of it all was to look at the streets that the city does have control over and maximizing those streets for parking. The reason Emma was blocked off was because of conversations I had had with, school district folks, where there was concern about through traffic. So for me, and the reason why this was proposed to the council, it was proposed to the council to see if UDOT would let us spend some of the dispersed parking money through our hotspot funding to see if we could even proceed with a conceptual design of paving. So you can see there the UDOT funds, the $250,000. Because for me, based on conversations that had happened over a year, first with Chuck and Judy saying, as I'm entering, being mayor of this city, what are you going to do to help us with our parking? And I said, I don't know, but I'll see what I can do, and I'll work toward that. Hearing from the school, don't allow through traffic. All right, we'll see what we can do about that. And so this was, so we couldn't even be having this conversation right now if this council didn't approach UDOT and say, well, can we use some of that money for dispersed parking, which was the whole point of the hotspot funding. So I just want to take some responsibility if there was confusion about what the council approved. Partly that was probably my fault, because the morning after our council meeting where we had approved going to UDOT to ask if we can use the dispersed parking money, I sent an email that said, hey, this was approved last night. And I apologize that caused some confusion. But I do want to say that this map that you see in front of you is the concept to try to do all of those things. And maybe it's the worst, and maybe like after this workshop we crumple it up and we huck it. But it was those intentions in mind. And I will promise you as well that code requires any development that happens on those Main Street parcels to have to put into their plan parking. And so whatever is developed here on Main Street, Prospector Village, they are going to have parking requirements. And so the parking that is proposed on the street in no way will benefit that business or that future development of that area. The future development will be required to do their own parking. And I'm just going to look to the lawyer and the city manager and the assistant city manager for nods of agreement with that.
There's no development credits that were granted in the exchange.
There are no development credits. So this parking will legitimately be for well, whoever pulls up and parks there. And if we are hearing as a council, you know what? Even though it's further, it's not going to work for employee parking. It's not going to work for long-term parking. That's helpful for us because, like I said, we can take this concept, we can crumple it, and we can move on.
I was just going to say that the hotel across the street, the Hampton Inn, yes, they were allowed to build to the size they are with the parking that they have. But right now, they're tearing down the side of a hill to add more parking. So whatever is going to be built there is most likely, the way the code is not going to have enough parking.
So I want to test that with, in the future. That's really helpful feedback. But just to respond, like, this parking area is in no way set to benefit future development. That's not what this is about. I'm telling you this from my deepest essence of who I am, that was literally, this design was literally to help businesses that were adversely affected by losing parking on Main Street. So if this is the worst, we will huck it. If it helps, we want to hear that. If it helps but has concerns, let's try to mitigate those. And that's what we really need to hear right now.
Okay, so I have a suggestion for what it's worth. So do away with the exit from Main Street, the Minnie Lee. Do away with that completely. Keep those other two roads open. Keep it open to 4th North and make all of your easement parking.
Take back what you traded and make it all
Just
one
make-
street, and make it
and-
Emma Boulevard like it belongs.
We don't need a one-way street through there. Make Emma Boulevard parking.
Ryan does have a comment to that. There is a reason why we do have a need for an easement.
Well, I just wanted to clarify one part. The current plans for the widening of 191 do not incorporate any type of access, vehicular access from 191 at that location. Anything that would be approved here would have to be change ordered into the project. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood this connection here is not currently in the plans.
The bike path is though,
The bike
correct, Ryan?
path, correct, sorry, thank you. The bike path is,
Can we go Google Earth, please?
but vehicular access at that location, right now, it's just curb and gutter straight through with a pedestrian ramp for the multi-purpose trail, multi-use trail.
And the multi-use trail is set to end. Can you hover where the multi-use trail, that we're all very excited that is getting continued, isn't it across the street?
Well, so what's gonna happen as part of the widening is the shared use path will extend from 500 west, where it is today, ends right here. It'll come down basically the east side of the highway, down to this location, which is where Minnie Lee comes across. Then there'll be a Hawk intersection, a Hawk signal put in here, which is a pedestrian actuated crossing like the one at City Market. And then our shared use path will start from here. It's about 250 feet short. We ended it right here when we did the 100 West project because we didn't have a design done. And we didn't want to take bicycles up here to the highway and then not be able to get across. So as part of the widening though, the path is extended, signal booths put in, and then the city has to pay to continue this path 250 feet.
And from what I understand, the path, we had to find a place to cross the path because there simply wasn't enough width of Main Street to bring the path further. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So why do you need a bike path there? Just go to Denny's, cross there, go up 5th West, and you're at the park.
Leave the bikes on 5th West where they belong.
And they're safer for them.
There's already a light there for them to cross at. And
Scott said the bikes don't necessarily want to be on Main Street anyway, it's too dangerous.
It's embarrassing.
So you have a light at 500 West.
I like on
I made that very
Main
clear
Street.
a long time ago. I do not want to be riding my bike on the side of the highway. I cross at 500.
well, it'll be like riding on the sidewalk now.
So, but why are you, maybe this was I asked this question when we had our meeting a year ago with Chuck and Joel, but why do you have to cross, why couldn't you have the bike path on the south side of the highway there instead of the north? Why do you have to cross at the Hawk light? Is there a reason for that? Maybe
Talking about
To put it on the west side of the road instead
the
of the east
west,
side
yeah,
of the road.
yes, I'm thinking south, but the west.
No, look, Chuck,
Right there, but you,
Chuck, you want?
but you don't need a hawk light there, you just go down
There's
the
already
fence.
a light there, so it'd be one less light.
Chuck, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah. So if I understand your question, let's call this the east side of the road.
Yeah.
And this the west side.
Right.
The entire west side of the road from 400 north up to the bridge is going to get curb, gutter, and standard sidewalk on the west side, which is a 5-foot wide or 6-foot wide sidewalk. So the reason that the shared use path, which is for bikes and pedestrians, is on the east side of the highway is to connect up there at 500 West. So two different purposes. The curb, gutter, and sidewalk on the west side of the highway is for pedestrians coming out of the hotels and neighborhoods. The shared use path is for people who want to travel out to the river, connect, go up to Arches. It gets used by a lot of people right now just recreationally.
And why aren't they on the same side?
There's no room for them to both be on the same side.
And so the east side will not have curb and gutter and sidewalk.
That's-
It'll only have the shared use path.
That's correct.
Isn't that path going to be taken away as it gets developed on the east side for driveways and parking lots for other businesses? Because I'm sure it's going to get sold and developed between.
Here, let's do this. Ryan, I want to give you the chance to respond, and then Cinda, you've got a comment. Do you want to respond to that? So the question is, why wasn't it planned to have the shared use path on the other side of the road and just the parking stop, the sidewalk?
I wasn't involved in the project at that time, but my understanding is exactly what Chuck just mentioned. It is that you don't have enough width to have both uses on the one side, so the purpose was to have the multi-use path on the one side of the road, the sidewalk on the other side of the road. As to the question of will the path be impacted by future crossings, I think there's already crossings throughout the entire path, and there's ways to mitigate that with, you can put a driveway across the path without removing the path itself. So I don't anticipate that being an issue that would cause us to have to remove the path.
Cinda?
A couple of things, and I'm taking this a little different direction, so I apologize. Going back to the development that you were talking about on the roads, I don't want to add something that makes this more drama, but at one point I had heard that we were talking about straightening 400.
Right.
And if that was an option, sorry, I don't know who that impacts, but if that was an option, then could you use some of that land that's taken up, that's left over, as a parking space? And then that would potentially give Poison Spider, the real estate company, and all of them a little bit closer parking that is on Main Street or that is closer to. I don't know.
I'm looking at Tawny because she might have more historical perspective.
I'm trying to remember.
And nobody really needs to answer
I just
me.
remember,
It's just an idea.
I just
so.
remember a particular person.
Joel, might be able to answer, because I think we were originally told that was a possibility, and then we were told it wasn't partially because of the right-of-way on the mortuary, and I think there's more history, but Joel might.
They're talking about the kind of the backwards S curve. It predates me as well, but I know Chuck knows.
Yeah, so there was a plan.
Maybe Chuck could just have his own microphone.
There was a plan before I got here to straighten this out at 400 North, but it would have required condemnation of these two parcels to do so, because otherwise they would have been split by 400 North. So after it was thought through, they decided to not do that because of that reason.
It was just giving you parking space if that was.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm just giving you the history as that was described to me.
Yeah,
to me.
I think at that time it was just decided not to, that it would
Not
adversely
eminently
affect
domain those
business.
parcels.
Yeah, and that's also very expensive. But still, even with that suggestion, we've still got a multimodal path coming into town, and we need to figure out how to get it across 191. And we're hearing that UDOT was not able to put that path on the west side, and that it needed to go along the east side. And so this council has been suffering through how to cross the path and help with parking in this area and and do it in a way that's going to benefit everyone that's interested, so.
So let me excuse me, let me offer this. Maybe a year ago, it was Kalen's idea, which I thought was a good one at the time. We were struggling with not enough right-of-way for a two-way street, and he suggested a one-way street from coming down from the north. And I remember I went out and spent at some length talking to, excuse me, some of the property owners out in the Poison Spider area. And at the time I thought, well, if everything goes right, this could work. And I listed a number of conditional, and I voted for proceeding under the terms, but only if these other assumptions I had made about how the area might develop would come to fruition. They haven't, right?
Can you list those conditions?
Yeah, I'm about to. One of them is, we were told by staff at the time that while negotiations were still in progress, I at least got the impression that it was likely that one or more churches would contribute their parking and make it available. And critically, the people who were parking there on their businesses, their employees, could have some sort of access through what is now the Church of Christ parking lot, which apparently is not going to happen. So I had, at the time I voted for it, I think, Scott, you've got a great point. I mean, it sounds like we didn't think it through. Actually, I did think it through, but I was working on certain assumptions that haven't come to pass. And that's the unfortunate part. That's why we got such a mess here. Having said all that, it seems to me, I'm looking ahead to the end game, what we might do here. I've heard a suggestion that we, and Ryan, this is the first time I've heard, maybe I've been asleep at the wheel, but I didn't realize that there wasn't any vehicular access that was being designed into that intersection at the present time. Is that correct? Okay, so only the...
You can't even park there. You can't even get there from here.
Okay. So there's a lot to be said for building the hawk light. I want to tell you guys that I'm a bicyclist. I use this, I go out to Fifth West all the time, and I was perfectly happy to cross the road there. And if we were not to put in the hawk light here, it leaves, remember Sarah, the Vice President Sarah, you know, the famous bridge to nowhere, you know, in Alaska. It would leave us with a similar situation here. We'd have a bike path that we just spent some money to build, no way to get across the Cotton Picket Street to a nice bike path on the other side. So that's kind of ugly. I was a little nervous about traffic congestion induced by pedestrians using a lot of that light, but maybe we can work around that. So I guess my question for you guys is, how much sentiment do you guys have as a group for basically doing what we're doing, except maybe forget about paving with UDOT funds, no vehicular access for the time being. The area pretty much stays like it is now without any vehicular access, but only the bike path would be active and the hawk light would still go on. The only thing more radical than that would be to ditch the hawk light altogether, but that leaves us with a block in the middle. That's kind of ugly. So what do you guys think about that?
How do we get into parking then?
Oh, it doesn't solve the parking issue.
You don't have any.
That was the biggest single block. I don't know what to do about the parking issue, frankly.
Take Emma Boulevard and make it the full width street and have on-street
We
parking
don't-
down both sides of it and trade it back and don't trade the property away and give it back to the Steens.
We can't go back, we can't go back to that.
Why?
Well,
Well, the Steens don't own it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mark Steen still has some.
Go ahead, you've got the
Yes, he
microphone.
So there must be a reason why you haven't thought about this, but I'm kind of curious. And as a side note, because I'm representing one of the churches, the attitude that we didn't want to play that has been reported in the paper and has been kind of said here is a little, it's wrong.
Yeah, thank
We
you for
all have
correcting
pro-
that.
We
Yeah.
have deed restrictions, and that's the way it is. And so the articles in the paper have been a little misleading, and I think the public thinks we're the bad guys because we don't want to share our parking lot, and that's not the case. But going back to your lot.
Can I just say that I'm sorry if the churches that have not been willing to open up for parking have been villainized in that way.
And I will say, as staff goes, when we try to negotiate these, they were all open to it and they all listened to us. ultimately, these are your properties and you have no obligation to let anyone use them. So from a staff perspective, we don't hold a begrudge to you for not allowing us to use them whatsoever. It's your property right, and we respect that. We as the
Yep.
city have our property rights, and if someone approaches us, if it works, we go forward, and if it doesn't, we reserve our right.
And we're grateful that the churches did meet with us and that said no, and so thank you for saying what you said, and I'm sorry if you've been villainized in that way.
Well, I'm just going to thank you too, because I think your position was misrepresented in a previous city meeting when you weren't present. So thank you for setting that straight.
Okay, so my question is with this little trade thing that you've done with Mike Bynum's group, whatever, for the coming off the highway, there's been no funding set aside for it. And really, supposedly, you guys are trying to design parking for Poison Spider, Arches Realty, and those places right there. Instead of doing a trade on the north end of those lots, see if basically reverse that trade and do a trade on the south end of those lots, which basically puts it behind Arches Realty and Poison Spider. Is there a reason why that has not been?
Yes.
Yeah, so in 2017, 18, again, guessing because I wasn't here, that was traded at that time. And at the time it was traded, the city went in and constructed that bike path about halfway up. So that easement that's been swapped for has been built in. So it's not as simple as just do the swap back. The city would literally have to go in and tear out infrastructure that it constructed in 2017, 2018.
And there's also Main Street width issues with that. So getting down closer to that area, I was told that there's a width issue of bringing the bike path down much further because we can't see it with this map, but we can see it on Google Earth that bringing the path further down can get problematic.
It gets into the
because
bend.
then it would be an eminent domain situation.
And the other thing I was told was that...
So see where the buildings are straight up on Main, right there where there's hover? So bringing the path down further than kind of where we're crossing, you know, where we have it marked across currently, that's why.
We went with the assumption you would leave the bike path there. I understand that that's part of the easement. Yeah, I didn't think that.
Yeah.
I was thinking leave the bike path there. And as a side note, that hawk there, as we watch what happens in front of City Market, that hawk confuses 95% of people. If you're going to put that on the north end of town,
They should put the instructions to that hawk right on the pole.
Yeah.
I know. The other thing I was told was the logic in putting the hawk where they did was at the time, just from the planners and the things they learn and how they try and do things, they were trying to line it up with the other road. So just from a planning standpoint, that was their logic.
Can I point something out on the map?
Well, I guess so.
Just as another idea that's completely off the book, like completely different.
Go nuts.
Okay, why can't we come right here on this path, put the hawk light here, come across into this neighborhood with your bike path?
Because that's somebody's property.
No, that's a strip right between there, there's no property.
That's a property, there's a house there.
Well, this one ends and this one ends and there's nothing there. It's a,
Is that map accurate?
and then you wouldn't need this street anymore. You could put your bike path right down there into the park, right in front of the school.
So there might be a width issue.
You might have to get this little bit of property to make it right, but it wouldn't make any difference. Right here in Rosalie, there's already a path where this property ends and that property ends, and this is a public right of way right there. So instead of putting the parkway here, go in Rosalie, make the parkway, this bicycle path cross here, go into this neighborhood, and the bikes can have the whole street. And then you can trade this back from Steen, because you don't need it, or Mike Bynum, or whoever owns the corporation that owns this property. You wouldn't need it anymore. Then you can get Emma Boulevard full strip, put parking down both sides of it, and you'd have plenty of parking.
Is if there's no vehicular access other than from 400 north, is parking on Emma still effective for the loss of parking from Main Street? if the signage was right. And then people parking, if they were to access businesses, they would park along Emma, they would walk down to 4th, over to Main Street and up.
You have to have access from there up to Main Street somehow. You have to have a walk path somewhere there.
Well, and see,
Everybody that owns property behind you don't care about your little triangle having access to go up to that street. So.
Well, I do care, so.
well, so back to what was said, it's, the churches are held to a certain deed restriction. So they've made their
But
statement, and I want to respect why that
I'm not
that
talking
hasn't.
about churches. I would never want to
So then let's go back to Amy to respond to what you just said, if that's what you're suggesting.
Sorry, am I responding to reversing the Emma Boulevard?
No,
or the-
providing access from Emma to Main Street.
Right there, right along that strip behind the end of
So,
that lot.
I might need Chuck's help on.
Not the church, above the church, the next lot north of the church. No, it's Mark Bynum's property right
Josh,
there.
I'll get you
where
next.
the Jeep rental company is.
Mayor,
Yes.
could you point on the map what they're talking about? Because I'm a little confused.
So Sandy is this okay that I'm identifying? Okay. Is referring to easement from the Emma area to
Along
this
one of them
area.
property lines.
But I think that the city would have to approach that landowner and ask that landowner just for a simple pathway.
So again, we're still gonna have a hawk up here somewhere. So
Yeah,
this is a separate thing.
Right.
And everybody recognizes
This is
that.
just so people can walk easily to Main Street from,
all that
Yeah.
parking that you're gonna have.
So
Not just the real estate office and not just Poison
kind
Spire.
of like the path that they
everybody
built in
else.
the motel by the bank, where you can actually go from Holiday, or I mean, from Mountain View subdivision through the creek and get to City Market. They had to accommodate a path through that somehow,
Well,
even though that
yeah.
path wasn't officially a path. They're asking for something similar here.
So, Amy, I just want to go back to you because it's property that you're representing, so that you can be really clear with any kind of message that you want to give this group that's talking about approaching you regarding access.
And I don't want to totally speak for the owner, but I know that the owner has talked about shared parking with a lot of those owners because we're all going to be in the same situation with parking there. But would a pedestrian easement through there be an issue? It may not be. It depends on what we end up developing there. They're looking at doing condo development or something like that. And so, you know, it depends on how that pedestrian walkway might work out. It could be an amenity to the complex, you know, who knows? So it would have to be looked at, and it may or may not work.
So that's a maybe, and you'll get back to us.
Well, I don't know how to get back to you without really looking at where you want this easement and what it would entail, and there's a lot of factors to that.
And just from the city's perspective, it's important to hear what we will or will not do in terms of, you know, persuading property owners to move forward with this, so.
I just wanted to point out something about that. Since Amy asked, if you came up along this property line, it's gonna dead end in the back of Poison Spider. So that may be good for Poison Spider, but it might just not be Poison Spider employees using the walkway is what I'm getting at. So I think usually when we look at these kind of pedestrian easements, we say, well, where would they end? Let's say we went up this property line here, and it would come into, I think this is your parking lot?
It is.
Right there, so it would dump an easement into the parking lot. Whereas if it was on this one, and again, I'm just pointing things out, that it would come up to the public right-of-way, to the new sidewalk, and people could walk down a public right-of-way. If it was gonna be a public easement, that's not to say that you couldn't have private easements between property owners, between Arches Realties, Poison Spider, Prospector Village. You know, you certainly get involved with that, but, so there's multiple things here. If it becomes a public easement, though, you have an obligation to go from public to public, public right-of-way to public right-of-way.
If you did a pedestrian easement on the north side of Church of Christ, at the bottom of Prospector Development there, and yes, it dead ends at the back of Poison Spider, but if they knew, if those businesses knew that they would have parking down on Emma Boulevard, Poison Spider and that other business, and the realty may be willing to do a little bit of rearranging somehow or another to make it to where there's walkway availability for people to get to their businesses. I don't know. Maybe everybody would be willing to work a little bit if they could get parking.
What's the easement like between Poison Spider and Maverick? Is there any chance you walk along that line and you drop south a few feet and pop out? I didn't know how many feet were there, so.
So to the, I'm sorry, I forget your name, from Church of Christ. Crystal. That fence, I've been here since '93, and the fence has been, like, so in no way did Poison Spider cut that fence.
No.
That fence has always been open, and we've always parked on Emma back there. That was always the access. I'm sure you know now that you have security cameras at any given day, that's how the kids from the pool, especially more in the summertime, access the Maverick. You know, there is the perfect walkway to get to the Maverick. You know, between Sandy, you and I walked that. You know, that there is access currently.
And what we did was just put a fence up right at the Maverick area on either side. That's what was taken down, not y'all's fence.
Yep, no, I know that. Yeah, because originally, and then it was also
Somebody
taken
put up a
down.
ladder.
It was also taken down on property. You know, and that's like kids, you know, my staff does not park in your parking lot. We park on Emma Boulevard. I do see people park there, to access the Maverick. I don't say anything to them because generally they're doing it for a very short period of time. I do also let you know, that the property line is wrong. And right now, Mike Bynum's fence is on your property.
It is, we're addressing that. We just found that out.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we've actually got in touch with our insurance company and had the property surveyed to check on that. So we do have some contacting to do to get a hold of some people that kind of the property line is a little here, a little there.
And it seems like it's kind of shifted to going east on your, by your shed. Like there, you know, I noticed where the stakes are, like rock that's a lot different than, that fence has always been there.
Yeah, I've lived here my whole life, so it's been there that long.
Josh, you've been patient with the microphone, so just
Thank
want to
you.
give you the
Can,
chance.
can you go back to the plans the way that you guys are proposing? Okay, so question that you asked earlier, and would you zoom out, sir, just a little so I can see? Thank you. Okay, so to answer your question that you had earlier, if we absolutely had to have this road put in there, which more than likely is going to happen because there was a trade made, you know, our say in it is going to definitely help shape this. That parking lot over there, one-way traffic, parking lot blocked off, one-way traffic on Madison to reach Emma Boulevard, seems like the most reasonable way to do it, which means you're going to be flipping your parking spaces over the other direction, like, but not like it'd be reverse parking, you know, but you're pulling in that way.
We're not doing any reverse parking.
I know, that was a joke. That was a joke. So, with that being said, we're going to put the hawk light up there, okay? And to identify that problem, you know, people are not going to be able to turn left there. So we're potentially looking at a southbound only entrance into Emma Boulevard is what you're saying, right?
So you're saying that you're in favor of traffic coming this way, traffic coming this way, and having a parking area here?
If I had to decide something, yes, right now. But the only reason I say that is it keeps the kids safe. It keeps people from doing You know, we all have that fear, drive-by kidnapping, you know, things like that. Or
And you would change the parking so that it would accommodate people parking this way.
yes,
How does everyone else in this room feel about that? Because there could be future agreements between the Prospector Village group and others, but absent of any access.
yes.
Is that a plan? I mean, raise of hands.
So the idea, because we're looking at this, and whoa, that got close. So we're looking at this, and we know that we're going to be building something here, right, guys? I mean, it's going to happen eventually. If we had to do this, what would make me the happiest, and think about it, I used to be Trans Tech 3 back in the day, looking at the road plans and all that. Turning onto Madison to get out, no traffic coming down at all.
Maxine, I was confused.
Maxine, sorry, I keep saying Madison. Maxine going one way past the church and around and out, okay? Emma Boulevard, or Lil, what is that? Lil Emma, or whatever it's called her? Minnie Lee. One-way traffic coming down, correct? One-way traffic coming down this way, because this is what they're suggesting right now. No trailer parking at all for any of these spaces, and having it set up to where nobody can, we're basically going to do what they did at the school and put do not enter about where that, keep going down, oh, there you go higher, right there, do not enter. I mean, that seems like, I mean, if we're all gonna leave here, that seems like that would be the basis on which to build this from. And then what these folks have said, speak to the landowner.
We do not, like this would not.
No, that would still be two-way because there's housing there, but we'll do not enter.
Oh, do not enter right.
Yeah, do not enter right there. Okay, and then we say this, okay? Speak to the landowner, see if he'll give you an easement through there for everybody else to be able to get to their businesses. And then those parking spaces that we see down there at the bottom could go to the businesses so they can walk in there. This is just, I'll lay this out as a foundation, and then maybe we can build upon that.
So just like straw poll, like, does anybody hate that idea? Raise your hand if you hate that idea. Okay. Oh, but it's not hate? I mean, we got to be clear in these days.
Below, coming Emma on this end, the apartments on the end, and Christ Church. Now, they can only come out on Emma. There's no, we can't come out on 400. So that would be two-way in front of Christ Church and in front of the apartments.
Yes.
And then start.
And we'd probably have to like
start one way at that shed right there. Yep.
Okay.
And construct a like turnaround.
It would be the same way it is. I think that's a good foundation to build on after hearing everything.
So I just want to ask real clear, does anyone not like that idea at all?
I just have a question. I'm not against it.
Okay.
I have a question. This is the plan that was approved.
All that was approved was approaching UDOT to use dispersed parking money.
But it was this is the one you approved at your meeting. So the pavement on.
Oh, you want to clarify?
Maxine,
Yes.
So that's going to take place of this? Because if that's paved, I'm okay with it.
Okay, so the question is regarding this spot here. So the reason why it was in the packet with this paved, and then I had Chuck bring up a different one, was because I didn't want anyone to be confused about the fact that the city was going to have to pay this money to pave this road.
But the city's willing to pay to do that?
Well, that's going to be up to the council, but again, like if you're asking, like this is something that makes this area work, that provides parking, that makes sure the flow is good for the school, that's gonna satisfy getting cyclists and unicyclists and runners safely over, then I think a comment, so I think what I'm hearing is that your comment is, I'd like to see Maxine developed.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Thank you. For parking.
Since we're
Thank you.
powwowing and thinking outside the box, if you can go to the aerial of and smaller, 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 all the way up to Denny's. I don't know if you can fit it on here with Denny's. Okay, so there's a traffic light here, from here all the way down to the old Poplar place. Trucks and traffic speed up, and it's between 45, and I know because my desk is right at the window. My desk is right at the window at Arches, so I see them all the time. So I used to live right here, and if you zoom farther out, a little farther,
Thanks, Chuck.
a little farther. Okay, a lot of these people that live in this area use North Mahavita to get in and to get out. And so when they come home, when you're turning here, the 18-wheelers are just barreling down this road, and they actually go on the dirt to pass you on the right, which is obviously illegal, UDOT. And I've had this discussion and also had UDOT follow me and terrified him and said, oh my God, I felt like I was going to get rear-ended by an ATV, a truck. So we're trying to accommodate not having a hawk light, and we're trying to accommodate biking, and those are two little conflicts here. So if we put a traffic light here, you know, the bike path's coming down here, and put a traffic light here, you don't have the hawk light, but then the bike path people can come down here and go down Mahavita. So it would eliminate a hawk light here. Having a traffic light here is going to slow people from Denny's to here, and then from here to Denver. So I mean to the Poplar place. So it slows the traffic down physically, that they can't be going from Denny's all the way down to the Poplar place 45, 35 miles an hour. So my beef was always put a traffic light right here, and you can, instead of doing a hawk light, that's where the bike path can cross over here and then go down that way.
It needs a light.
So the light would you wouldn't have a hawk light, you just have a traffic light. And then these people that all live in this area all go in and out this area, because the school, you get stuck. And a lot of them don't drive out to Fifth West to get back down onto Main Street. I know, I lived there for over 20 years. And so that's what I saw all the time, was 18-wheelers driving on the dirt over here to pass you on the right. So you'd have a traffic light, it would continually slow people down.
Does that make you concerned that visitors and non-residents would be turning into residential if there were a light there? Does that make
you know
concerned?
what? We used to have that, and we had a dead end sign right here. People would come down and turn around when trying to get over to Fifth West. They figure it out pretty quick. They only make that mistake once. So, I mean, I lived there. So it wasn't like I lived there for a day or two. I lived there for more than 20 years.
So I do think that was one of the ideas that was put out. And Ryan, I'm too young to know why that was canceled. I'm assuming it was because, the reason I asked that question was because fear of
There's just a lot of people that
traffic coming into residential, but.
They go in and out of there. It's a huge traffic area.
I was going to say, when Chuck can help me remember too, but because this is early on when I first got started, but there was some discussion and there was a signal study done in the area. I'm not prepared to say exactly what the signal study said. I haven't reviewed that 100% recently, so I'll probably not talk about that specifically, but I know there was a traffic signal study done in this area, and I'll let Chuck maybe talk about that a little bit, but it's important. I want to clarify one thing just because I've heard a couple comments in the gallery as I've been sitting here. Is I said that in the current plans there is no access to this area. When the city approached UDOT about possibly funding these parking solutions, UDOT's response was if the city was willing to connect that with the mini avenue. So I've heard some people say, well, why build parking if there's not an access? There is not currently access because there's not currently any approval to construct these parking solutions. The city council, like the mayor had mentioned, had approved approaching UDOT about these parking solutions, but none of that has been approved. If there wasn't a mini Lee connection to US 191, it would make the parking solutions not very feasible. So I just wanted to clarify that, but then I'll let Chuck talk a little bit about the signal because it's important. when we originally started the project, there was actually a full intersection designed at the current Hawk location with an approved traffic signal to be put in at that location. And it was requested that we remove that for the safety of the school and the increased traffic, because it would incorporate a 2-lane road coming out of Emma Boulevard. So I'll let Chuck talk.
Yeah, Ron, you remember that part correctly, which is that the reason it ended up being a Hawk is because council said they didn't want two-way traffic coming in and out of Minnie Lee, right? We got direction from council to have it a one-way. So you can't have a traffic signal in on the one-way road like that. There's no need for a traffic signal for that. So the Hawk accomplishes it, and I'm not quite sure about the comment about turning left at the Hawk. You could be going northbound and turn left at that Hawk into Minnie Lee if it were built. Just for clarity, someone else earlier, I think, said, no, you
There'd
can't.
be a turn lane. I think they're just saying
There will be a center turn lane,
lots
yes.
of traffic coming might make it difficult to, I don't know, turn left on Main Street,
Yeah,
off of Main Street.
Well, I won't disagree. I won't disagree with that, but
Yeah.
you can legally and physically make the left turn movement, is what I'm
Right,
saying.
you might just be sitting there for a while.
Mayor, can I just ask 2 questions?
But the other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go, finish, yeah.
I was just going to say the other thing, I believe that at Mi Vida, the traffic signal wasn't warranted now with the county movements. And hopefully also, those dirt shoulders are pretty much going to go away on the west side of the street. That's where the curb gutter and sidewalk. So hopefully you won't have tractor trailers jumping the curb like I believe you that they were over on the dirt.
And they'll stay on
And
the
the other
left
thing
lane.
is, you probably all noticed that now at Denny's, going south on the highway, it's been dropped down to 35-mile-an-hour speed limit from 45. So that's only.
Doesn't change anything.
That's permanent.
Ronnie, you wanted to say some
permanent.
things?
Oh, yeah, I just had 2 things. And one was a question for the audience, if people had a preference for A or B, A being what Josh suggested. I wanted to double check. Josh, were you thinking that A involves having the dispersed parking in the north part?
So we'll call this A.
Yeah.
A would be.
Microphone for me. Just grab the, sure, thank you.
Okay, so A would be coming in Emma Boulevard, one-way traffic with Maxine, right? Minnie Lee. That's Minnie Lee. So then down is, so Minnie Lee is one-way traffic. So let's go ahead and trace that all the way out like it's one-way traffic. So going down there and then boom. Okay, parking space up there at the top. Dispersed parking, no trailers. Come down here to Maxine, right? That's Maxine right there. Maxine, one-way traffic going straight through that way, hooking a right, going down. Now, entering from Emma Lee from the bottom, two-way traffic to that shed, and then it stops there, and then we have the do not enter signs, and that way the churches can still pull in there. In a perfect world, if this happens, and the business owner is willing to give us an easement, probably a 10-foot easement, so people could walk in there. Probably doesn't even need to be paved, though. You guys will probably have to put concrete down and have access ramps and all that. If one was allowed to be put in there somewhere in that area that could go to the businesses there, then and then the businesses could utilize that pull-in parking that was right there.
Okay, so if that's A, I guess my question would be if there was a B on the list that doesn't include that dispersed parking, is that preferable to people only because I'm thinking as a council member, if I can use that $250,000 somewhere else where the community feels like it's serving more people, would you like me to try to reserve that $250 for something else? And I guess I also have a side question for Ryan if he's still here.
Well, let's give people the chance to answer that. So do you want to restate your question just so it's clear?
Oh, okay. Well, so I'm clear on what Josh's vision would look like, and I'm just wondering if there's an option B that's exactly the same as Josh, but it doesn't include this. This is just one way. There's a cutoff here. Nothing happens here. And I save that $250,000 to use for dispersed parking somewhere else if people feel like this design isn't benefiting that many people, if that's at all preferable.
Wait, so you're saying you're going to completely eliminate the parking on the...
I'm just wondering if that's preferable to people, if you had the 2 choices, because I heard earlier in the meeting that people felt like that parking wasn't going to be used.
At the end of the day, with that park, with that parking there, that would be a place for businesses nearby to put parking if they absolutely had to. I mean, if we have to spend that $250,000 on parking, that seems like the safest option for us, as long as there's still access for the property owners right there to pull into those garages.
So what I'm hearing, still, the critical issue is access to Main Street. Okay.
Yes.
The park, whether to pave or not, to me, seems to be a secondary consideration.
Yep, access to those, because, we don't want these guys to have to walk 100 yards to get to their business. It's going to be infeasible. It's going to hurt business for them eventually. If there's a way for them to park down there and be able to access through the back, through that property line, and maybe as a business owner, they could go right into your parking lot there. I'm sure the city could put a fence in for you guys. Bike patrol goes out through there every once in a while. I mean, other than I see how many people you have, there's really, I don't have to worry about that over there. You guys have it all locked down pretty good. But, if we had that access to go through there, and it's not really advertised for people to use, and people can just walk right through there and get to their businesses, that would probably be the most preferable way, because I know at the end of the day, you're going to develop this. Whether it doesn't happen this meeting or next meeting, it's going to happen. We might as well say one-way traffic that keeps our kids safe. No trailer parking in there, so it truly is parking for people that are stationing there or overflow from the park events. And then also, too, one-way traffic that keeps our kids safe. Because at the end of the day, it's really important for the businesses and it's important for the parents.
So everyone, it's 6:50, and we're going into our council meeting at 7. I'm sure everybody sitting here would like a 10-minute break before we go into another 3 hours of meeting. So last words, please be brief. Thank you.
Can you bring up the one where we've got the whole Main Street a little bit more to the right of that? So, so many things have been brought up tonight about with the churches and especially with the school. And being a business owner, my main concern, because I don't have kids, is access to my business. We kind of got railroaded by the state. We can probably all going to have to accept that. But one alternative is to run access from any of the parking that's going to be along Emma Boulevard. If you go on the north side of the Church of Christ, along whoever we want to call that property's line, go back behind Poison Spider going straight north. So go along that, now straight north, keep going north, keep going north, keep going north. That way we're not crossing anybody's property in terms of security with either the real estate office or with Poison Spider. Also, Poison Spider, we've got a 6-foot retaining wall that we're retaining our own water that we collect on our property, plus what comes down from the hillside. And that would be something that I would think, with all this land trading and this and that that's been done to facilitate access to this area, that the city could and maybe should be helping us out with gaining that access and with whatever kind of relationship that you have with that property owner. And maybe from the property owner in good faith, that, or even some exchange of some dollars, that this would be one way of facilitating access from the parking on Emma.
So I need a break, and I have to call it quits. We're going to reconvene at 7 o'clock. I won't take a motion to recess. We'll just keep going at 7 o'clock, and we'll just take a 7-minute break here. Thank you all for coming out. This means a lot to us, and it is very helpful in decision-making. We appreciate it. That was a lot of time that we all spent. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.